Thank you for tuning back into the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn Tierney with Insights in Automation. And this week on the show, I meet up with Gerry, Gavin, and Kaitlin from Copia Automation to learn about their latest AI features that have been integrated into DeviceLink. I think you guys will find that very cool. And then in the second half, we're going to talk about their recent survey, their DevOps report for this year. And they surveyed companies to see where they're having downtime, how much downtime is costing them, and what are the major causes of downtime. So I think we really have like a double header here. We'll do DeviceLink in the first half, and then we'll do the survey results in the second half. And I think you guys will really enjoy this episode. And I want to thank Copia for sponsoring it to make it completely ad-free. So with that said, I want to welcome Copia back to the show. We have Gerry, we have Gavin, we have Kaitlin, and I want to thank you all for coming on. And because it's been a few months or several months since you guys have been on, and I know some of you are new to the show, I was hoping we could go through and do introductions again. And Gerry, if you don't mind kicking it off, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Shawn. It's a pleasure to be back again. I love being on your podcast and really excited about the content we have here today. Gerry Abbey, the head of marketing here at Copia, and along with me, fellow Copians, Gavin and Kaitlin. Gavin, I'm going to pass it off to you next for introduction.
Thanks, Gerry, and it's a pleasure to be here, Shawn. My name is Gavin Schalliol. I'm Senior Product Manager at Copia. Over to you, Kaitlin.
Thanks, Gavin. And I'm Kaitlin Lockridge. I'm a Senior Technical Solutions Engineer here at Copia. So I help primarily with our sales team running demonstrations, kind of explaining the product and all of that. So I'll be getting to do a demo today. And I'll pass it back to you, Gerry.
Thank you, Kaitlin. All right. On the agenda today, we are going to be digging into a quick intro of Copia. Then I'll be passing it off to Gavin to talk about AI in DeviceLink, our automated backup system. And then Gavin will be passing it off to Kaitlin for a live demo of the product. And then to wrap it all up, we'll be digging into our recently released second annual State of Industrial DevOps report and many of the key findings. So with that, who is Copia today? So Copia was founded in 2020, started shipping product in 2021. To date, has raised around $30 million in funding and continues to grow rapidly. We have around 200 customers to date and a pool of talent that comes from both the IT world and the OT world, which brings a great amount of insight, experience, and value to how we develop the product so that it's best in class for the customers that we serve. A few customer successes, names you might recognize, and they're talking about some of the value and ability to deploy Copia's solution quickly and gain value quickly, which I've worked in analyst relations for years and years, and one of the top of mind pieces of feedback that is always out there when you think about technology is how do we gain value from this solution? How fast can we gain that value? How difficult is or not difficult is it to deploy into our current systems? We continue to evolve our partnerships as we grow and scale, and these are some of our select partnerships that we have today.
And for our audio audience, some of the partnerships they have, AWS, Clarity, Belden, Inductive Automation, Aviva, NextLinks Labs, Aquarius, Armix. I mean, these are some of these names are very well known on, by the people who follow us. So I just wanted to, just shout those out there for anybody who's listening. They know these are some of their partnerships they have.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate that. I was actually at Inductive Automation's conference last week, and really such a great organization to partner with because of that amazing solution they have, platform in Ignition, and the enthusiasm customers have around it. It's definitely something that Copia looks at when we look to partner, embodying similar cultures and empowerment of the end users. To level set where we are today, thinking about where the need is for a solution like Copia, we look at enterprise organizations, and some of this data is from talking to customers, some of it is from running research reports and pulling in from other reports and data as we better understand our market. So today's reality for enterprise organizations is that you have a lot of locations. And in my slide here, I call out an 18 location organization. You have thousands of PLCs, thousands of associated devices, and then around 100 people working on those across the 18 facilities. And that's a mix of controls engineers and technicians. Then if you're similar to this type of organization, either you've undergone some mergers and acquisitions to pull in more plants, or you've had supply chain challenges or specific machines, and maybe other reasons as well. But you have a mix of PLCs. And for this example, we're looking at a mix of 60% Siemens, 30% Rockwell, 5% Codesys, and 98% of the coding for these in ladder logic. While that might not be specific to your own environment, I imagine anyone listening to this can picture that mix across facilities. And then thinking about what you do with your industrial code that's on those PLCs and industrial code beyond that. Manual backups, probably ad hoc version control, which as you grow and scale, and when you think about all those many devices, think about the toll of trying to manually back up all of those with your employees, how challenging it will be for them, and where gaps might end up. Then if you do have a third-party solution, you might have some backups, primarily version control, and where all of this is leading is thinking about OT cybersecurity, which continues to be top of mind. Just recently, JLR has been in the headlines almost every day because of a recent cyber attack there, and there's been many others. But when you have this OT cyber vulnerability, it's because of incomplete asset inventories, unknown code changes, outdated backups, and you have a limited or no recovery plan at all. So it makes you that much more vulnerable when something like this happens. These are a couple of the headlines. In the upper left of the slide I'm showing, you can see the R1 Jaguar Land Rover that started. I think I captured this one right around when it started. It was end of August, early September. It's still going on right now, and we're recording on the 25th of September. On the right side, Bridgestone Americas confirmed a cyber attack on September 1st. The bottom two are from a couple years ago, but also huge headlines that you may remember. Toyota in 2022 shut down 14 facilities, and Ferrari had a data breach in 2023. These were just some of the biggest ones I found, but certainly there's more. And we continue to learn about more because there's more regulations in the space requiring mandatory reporting.
Yeah, and I just want to throw out there too that I know all of those were like automotive related, but I think you guys who are listening out there, you guys and gals, you know that it affects, consumer goods products in other industries, pharmaceutical. Those are the ones that nobody wants to hear about. But, it affects just plain old consumer goods companies as well. And I've known of some where, machines have sat idle because they didn't have a backup of the code. So important. And, are you going to back up 2,000 PLCs manually, with your, 75 technicians? You could. And, if you don't use a solution like Copia, that's something I hope you've already done, because we've all known, and, we just had the ISA on recently talking about cybersecurity. We all know how important this is. It's not just a nicety. It's like having brakes on a car. It's something you have to have. So let me turn it back to you, Gerry.
Thank you, Shawn. I appreciate the added commentary there. And you're right. There's actually a consumer goods company I was looking at that was one of the first to report under the SEC guidelines that were released in 2023. And the case study I was reading about it reflected an amount in the billions that they were impacted, because it wasn't just the downtime, which was in the millions or hundreds of millions. It was reflected in the stock price drop because of the announcement that they were hit and systems were down. Yeah, it's wild. So now I'm going to dig into how we can move away or recover from these attacks faster. And that really starts at the base of understanding our technology stacks. A lot of times organizations, and for years organizations, have been focused on getting everything with IT right, getting everything modern. And on the left side of the graphic I'm showing, it shows your information technology DevOps stack. And that starts at the base with your operating systems and databases like a Red Hat, Snowflake, Microsoft. The next layer up, your asset management and security. That pulls in CrowdStrike, Okta, Splunk. And then the top layer, which is where Copia is really focused on the OT side, is your backup and disaster recovery. And for IT, that's organizations like Rubrik, Commvault, Veeam. On the right side of what I'm showing here is the operational technology DevOps stack, which has developed after the IT stack and continues to mature. And at the bottom for that one, I'm looking at the IoT space, IIoT, factories and devices. All of that baseline gets set with companies like Schneider, Siemens, Rockwell. Then you move again to that asset management and security layer, where you have companies like Nozomi, Dragos, Clarity, and those organizations were all founded roughly 10 years ago. It's taken a while for that space to mature. We had networking, have been getting networking right for the last 20 years, 30 years, and nailed it. Asset management and network security is somewhat table stakes at this point. We can hit that layer and understanding of backup and disaster recovery. It's the next evolution of getting the OT tech stack in order, and it gives you that vital ability to recover and to know what the last good instance of your PLC and other code is, like Shawn pointed out. Now, Copia, we are very focused on industrial DevOps and bringing that to the space. And if you're familiar with DevOps, it is typically represented with the infinity loop and focused on that CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Because we work in a cyber physical world where if you change code, it has real world repercussions, we have a modified one. And I worked with the authors of Industrial DevOps, Build Better Systems Faster, Suzette Johnson and Robin Yeaman, to develop this. And in the middle, if you're not able to see the graphic, we put that physical space of automation and production so that we understand that we want to continuously back up and work on the code, but we also need to account for the physical impact of changing it. So there's that extra step there that needs a hyper-specific solution to ensure safety and the ability to tap into all the multi-vendor devices that are out there. Right now, I'm showing the evolved definition that we've come to as we continue to talk to customers and iterate through learning of all the things that I presented so far. And industrial DevOps is a methodology for applying lean, agile, and DevOps principles to the planning, development, manufacturing, and serviceability of cyber physical systems. So that's a lot of what I just talked through. And where we see it in action, how we achieve it, is industrial code lifecycle management. I'm sure many of you listening are familiar with lifecycle management approaches. And now we're looking at, because we can do it, managing industrial code in a similar way and treating it like the critical asset that it is for all the reasons we've talked about and many more that I'll go through later in the presentation. So, rounding out this intro, who is Copia today? Copia founded on Git-based source control, so you can visually see differences in your industrial code, the different versions, how you can version control, see who's changing things, when they're changing, why they're changing, and who has access to it. And DeviceLink is our automated backup and disaster recovery solution, backing up PLCs, HMIs, robotic code. You can schedule or put jobs on demand, and you get change detection and notifications and can visually compare what's been changing in the code. And then above these two layers or going across them is Copia AI, where we've continually been adding AI into the solution after rigorously testing it with alpha and beta testers so that it's coming in to add value. And we were actually on the show a few months back with you, Shawn, to launch our Copilot to help with coding, summarization, new code generation, documentation, something that nobody really has time for, but everybody needs to have documentation about their code and to build out those libraries. Now, with what we're going to show today is that AI moved into DeviceLink to show automated change detection and natural language summaries. There's one last slide I'm going to touch on lightly, and then I will hand it off to Gavin to dig in on that last point. But one of the things when you're thinking about your OT cyber resilience and cybersecurity, and something that we think about all the time in manufacturing, in distribution, is visibility, control, and recovery. And the problems that we have today with visibility is code blindness. And the modern solution with a Git-based source control gives you the visibility so that you're not dealing with code blindness. Control, you have uncontrolled changes and a lack of standard processes that introduces vulnerabilities. With a modern solution, you can implement secure workflows and approvals. And then lastly, with recovery, manual or unreliable backups, which we've touched on a few times, and the modern solution, automated device backups, and the ability to recover and build an incident response plan and a recovery plan. And at the end of the day, what the outcome of all of that is a reduction, a dramatic reduction in your mean time to recover, that MTTR. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gavin.
Thank you very much, Gerry. Again, I'm Gavin. I'm Senior Product Manager at Copia. Most of the time, I'm responsible for our DeviceLink product, which Gerry has talked about a little bit. And I'm always trying to make the product better for our customers, whether that's for the ones who are just seeking peace of mind, who want a tool they can set and forget that just works in the background, or for those who want to dig in a little deeper and use backup and disaster recovery tools for observability and monitoring, and perhaps for disaster recovery planning or compliance. And much like everyone else at Copia, we're always trying to experiment with technologies on the cutting edge. In this case, we were really interested in seeing whether there were applications of AI and LLMs that we could bring into the DeviceLink world. As you probably know, we launched our Copilot product in November of 2024. It started out as a chatbot in which you can, much like ChatGPT, converse and use it to document your projects or explain code or generate net new code. There's a lot of material out there about Copilot, and what we were wondering was, could we bring Copilot directly into DeviceLink, into the workflows of people who are using backup and disaster recovery every day? So that meant I had to think about how our users used it and what they wanted out of it, how it could make their lives easier. And what we settled on, Kaitlin is going to, after I finish here, give you a deeper dive into this. What we settled on is we wanted Copilot to give our users a natural language description of any code changes that were detected using DeviceLink. And this can be powerful in a lot of ways, because I think the main thing is a lot of our customers, we found, use our product to monitor their PLCs for code changes that they didn't expect. So, for example, they'll set up their Copia source control system to commit code changes into the same branch that DeviceLink also commits its changes into. That means that if the same code is checked into source control and also detected on the PLC, then no change is detected and everything looks good. It's every time that DeviceLink detects a code change that that you raise a flag and say, hey, this is something I didn't expect. So DeviceLink, for a lot of our users, is used as a review tool where if it detects a change, it means that there's something to dig into. Something happened here. Maybe a process wasn't followed. Maybe there was a hot fix on a line. Maybe you need to look a little bit deeper to make sure there's nothing wrong here. And what we think AI can be powerful for is we want to reduce the time people spend doing tedious change review when looking through change notifications in DeviceLink. You can take a lot of time digging through entire projects, trying to understand exactly what has changed. And I think with most things, they probably follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the changes probably are not that important and don't need you to look at or review deeply. Maybe there was a minor tag value change. Maybe you had to decrease the speed of a conveyor when you were doing a hot fix on the line, but it's something you understood and approved already, so you already know about. It's not something that really needs your attention at this time, but there's always a subset of important changes that are going to be require closer review, and you really want your attention to be focused on those things instead of scattered everywhere. So in the next slide, I've shown two workflows, one with Copilot for DeviceLink and one without, that illustrate how Copilot for DeviceLink brings this triage process earlier in your workflow and helps you do it faster without having to read through the control code every time. So in the first example, DeviceLink will detect changes and you can set up notification emails for those changes. So the email will be sent to your inbox. You might wait a little while before you open the email. Maybe you're not monitoring your inbox all the time because you're off doing other things. Then you open up those changes in Copia, and if you don't have Copilot for DeviceLink, then you first need to look at the code diff in those changes. And that means, we have pretty good code highlighting, diff highlighting. We'll show you exactly which rungs changed, exactly which parts of the rung changed, and draw your attention to where the code changes are. But there is still an element of interpretation involved. You need to look at exactly which routines changed, and you need to form a judgment as to whether those are critically important or not. And only then can you make a decision whether you want to ignore this, whether you want to delegate it, whether you want to look into it more closely. And at the end of the day, you then decide 80% of these changes don't require further review, but we need to action 20% of them. However, you've had to go through an entire process of reviewing and reading the code every time. And we estimate this would probably take about 45 minutes per ticket. It's hard to say. I'm sure these numbers vary deeply across industries and across all sorts of environments. But this is just a preliminary estimate. On the other hand, if you have Copilot for DeviceLink, what happens is when you get that change notification email, then the change is described in a couple of bullet points directly in the email. And what you can do from this point is, without opening Copia, without reading through the code, without getting the project file and looking through it in your IDE, you can immediately make some decisions if it needs to be actioned or not, because the diff description will more often than not tell you immediately, or at least give you a sense whether this is really a major change or not. If there's multiple bullet points that describe changes to multiple control rungs, or if it talks about changes to code that you know is safety critical, or if it describes changes that you weren't expecting, you know immediately that this is going to be an important change that you need to look at more closely. But if it's just a minor tag value change, like I mentioned, or something that you already expected and that you know about, then you can immediately just close that and ignore it. This will save you a bunch of time because it means you don't have to go through that entire code review process and make a judgment as to whether it's important on those 80% of changes that are just not that critical to look at. This means that your overall time in reviewing these changes goes down very significantly because it doesn't require that step, that extra cognitive step where you're actually doing all of the important interpretation. We estimate this will decrease your review time by something like 35% for changes. And we've heard a lot of feedback from our customers that say they really like receiving descriptions in their emails of what changed immediately when DeviceLink detects it. So again, what we're really trying to do with Copilot for DeviceLink is bring this new technology of AI and LLMs directly into your workflows as closely as possible to make what you already do on a day-to-day basis easier and faster. Thank you.
All right, so with Gavin's introduction to AI and DeviceLink, let's actually take a look at it. We'll go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to land here within the DeviceLink interface in Copia. So this view that we're looking at here, this is going to be your job history view within a site. So just say you've got a manufacturing site, you've set up all your devices here, and they're backing up regularly. This is going to be the page that shows us what the results of those backups were. Gavin mentioned these a moment ago, but just to hit on those again, we've really got two main results. The first one is going to be up to date, which is what you're shooting for. So that means no code changes were detected in this backup. That means you already have a copy of that file in your history, and this is expected. Modified means that changes were detected, and these are going to be the results that you're going to need to dig into a little bit. So these are going to be the ones that do have the AI summary messages for them here. So I've got a few examples we'll take a look at. So within the job history table here, you can drop this down and that will load your AI summary message. So you'll see here you get a high level summary that will be tied to this backup. And then you'll also have bullet points of the other changes that were found throughout this result. And we'll see this for a few other examples here. And then I'll show some other places throughout the product where these summary messages will appear. So just as a few examples here, this is going to give you the opportunity to easily go in, read what that summary message was, and then from there you can make that decision on, do I need to get more details? Do I need to look into that visualization of the actual changes in the code? Or was I expecting this and I'm okay with just letting that modified backup kind of sit in my history and I don't need to do any more digging on that result?
Just to give the listeners a couple examples. So one example is change engineering units for this tag from GPH to %. So to me, that's not really a programming change. That would probably be something that would affect the Skater HMI. And so that wouldn't be something I would get too upset about. The next one is modified metrics routine in Cooking Station to increase a tag. Instead of increasing it by increments of 2, it now increases by 1. And to me, I'm going to have to think about that. It's like, is that correct? I mean, why was it incrementing by 2 in the begin with? You know, I may know something about that process to say, hey, that's not correct. It needs to increment by 2. And so this is really giving you a great summary, telling me what's happened, what changed in the code. I really love this. So I just wanted to say that for the audio audience. Let me turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. All right, so these summary messages do appear here in the job history, but we do know a lot of our users don't monitor this job history page all that regularly. They rely on the email notifications a lot of the time, so these will also populate in the email notifications. And I do have an example of that to show as well, just so you guys can get a feel for what that looks like. So these will come to your inbox, so you don't have to go and log into Copia to do that process of giving that review. You could just open up your email and you'll be able to see that same information that we were just seeing in the job history table. And then from there, if you do see that there's something in there you want to dig into details on, you can follow the link in the email to that job result as well. So that's what we'll move into next, is taking a look at the job result, seeing where that AI summary populates in the job result page, and then looking into some of those other details that you get within the job result. So this is going to be your modified job result page. This top section of the page here, this is what we consider our job card. This has all of that data related to when the backup ran, how long it took, all of that. And then towards the bottom of the job card is where that AI summary message is going to populate as well. So this is giving it to you in this view so you can easily see it here. And then if you scroll down, you'll get to see the standard visualization, which we had already been offering in the backup results as well. So this is going to be our change visualization. So when we did that comparison, we uploaded from the device, we brought it back to Copia, and now we're comparing to that last version that we have. This is indicating to us all of those changes that were detected. So within the project tree, we see 3 icons over here. So we'll be able to show you, did this project item, was it modified here? You'll be able to see, was this project item added, so it didn't exist in the previous version? And then if the project item was removed, so it was deleted from this version of the project. And then you can click into those different items to see specifically what those changes were. So if I clicked into this routine here, we'll see that I have highlighting of red and green. Red means that it was deleted and green means that it was added. So if I saw something in my AI summary message about a specific routine, I can easily scroll down in the project tree to that routine, click into it, and then I can see what those changes were that were detected in this backup here. And then from here, you can go through that triaging process of making a decision. Do I need to revert back to the previous version of the code, or am I okay with keeping this running in my device?
Yeah, for anybody who programs PLCs, it's just beautiful to see the project tree on the left with all everything instantiated, like the routines and tags and all that. And then in the middle of the screen to see actually your code highlighted and see exactly what changed. It saves you so much time from having to pull up your editor, your IDE, right? And having to do a compare. So it's just, if you're listening and not watching, I think this is one of the screens you want to take a look at, because to me, the time savings is just dramatic. But let me turn it back to you, Kaitlin.
Thanks, Shawn. That is really everything I have for the AI summary messages in DeviceLink. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Gerry.
Thank you, Kaitlin. And now that you've gone through that, and with everything you and Gavin presented and where we let off, I just wanted to close the loop on one of the slides I showed with today's reality and moving it into today's possibility. So with everything we just talked through and everything we showed, today's possibility offers such a better scenario when you think about those 18 facilities or however many facilities you and your operation are operating today. You can have cyber resilience and rapid recovery with live asset inventories when you bring in that asset management network security solution, like those offered from Clarity, Nozomi, Dragos, and many others. And you can have automated backups because you know that asset inventory and what needs to be backed up. And that's where Copia comes in with that complete collection of automated cloud backups. And all of this enables your rapid recovery plan. Again, reducing that mean time to recover, your MTPR, from days or weeks to minutes with files that you can trust from a place that you can access in an emergency. All of this brings in centralization. So you have, from that earlier slide, these 18 locations, 4,000 plus devices, 103 team members, but they're all operating from a single centralized platform with automated Git-based version control. So every code change is automatically backed up, versioned, and documented, and that gives you the golden backups, the latest and the correct version of code. It's always available for every single device. And you have this vendor agnostic access and control across your devices, whether it's Siemens, Rockwell, and Codesys, like I laid out, or some other mix. and you can seamlessly manage all your projects in one environment. When you think about the workforce today, the challenges of replacing roles, especially skilled roles that have a lot of institutional knowledge, like your controls engineers, you can get people up to speed so much faster if they are able to operate in this environment, especially with the controls in this environment, so that you're also driving this mentorship type relationship on your teams where someone newer can come in, they can work on the code, and everyone can feel calm and safe in the knowledge that that code isn't being immediately deployed to the machine. It has an opportunity for commenting, for improvement before it goes out there. And it's just these modern tools for all code that are now available in the OT environment. It empowers your engineers and technicians and does so much for your workforce to make them feel empowered, to drive that powerful community culture of working together, because everybody can work together in one place and it can just do so much. So with that, we will move into the second annual State of Industrial DevOps report. Well, it's a super exciting report to work on for many reasons. Amazing responses, and after last year's findings, I was very excited to dive in and see what we were going to get out of this year's responses. So we released around midsummer, and one of the big headlines was this 4.29 million per hour for downtime as the consensus estimate from the C-suite respondents in our survey. And that was about 45% of our survey respondents. When you look at the downtime numbers year over year, very similar for the managers, very similar for all the roles, except for C-suite. So we did see a decrease in C-suite over time, and I'm going to come back to that as we go through the other slides, because I have a few hypotheses around this. But one of the key things that we're going to talk about as we go through is the disparity from everyone else and the C-suite. And I think the C-suite has a wider view when there's a downtime incident of things beyond just the production line being down or the factory being down. Because as you resolve a downtime incident, there may be insurance costs, bringing in insurance providers for that. There may be lawyer costs coming in if there was a safety incident, inspectors coming in. There's many other costs that can get rolled into that. And regardless, everyone has a downtime number and it's painful. And what I want to call out here is when you think about that downtime number, is everyone in your organization aligned, or are different people calculating it in different ways? And how is that impacting your decision making, especially your prioritization?
Yeah, I think if we think about this, it seems like the people closer to the actual machine put a lesser amount on the downtime. But I think that's because they have a smaller view of the effects of that downtime. For instance, if I'm the guy operating the machine, I'm like, oh, we were down for an hour, so I didn't make 10 parts. What's the big deal? I'll just work, an extra hour. But, people up the food chain may know, well, that order had to ship by noontime, or, that order got canceled because it wasn't ready on time. So the higher up the food chain you go, the higher up you go from manager to director to C-suite, it seems like you have a bigger picture. Now, some could argue conversely that their view is maybe more clouded from the higher up, but I would disagree with that. It really does seem like the higher up you are, the more knowledgeable you are of all of the effects of a downtime event. And so just something for the audience to think about, and I'll throw it back to you, Gerry.
Thank you, Shawn. And I appreciate the added feedback there. This slide, more than any other, sparks the most discussion, trying to think about what's going on here. And I think some of the next slides will shed a little more light on it. And being that this is our second annual report, it makes me more excited for our third and fourth to continue to get more data year over year and compare it. So in the survey, we also asked about the causes of downtime. We asked general, all downtime, planned and unplanned, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Right now, we're going to look at unplanned downtime cause. 2 years in a row, cybersecurity was the number one reason. A breach, attack, remediation. This year, cybersecurity tied with hardware malfunction and coding issues. And then to round out that top 5, human error and environmental disaster. Now, when I look at downtime and talk about issues with customers at conferences, with industry experts, these typically are the top 5 that show up. I see this more and more, and cybersecurity right at the top of it. And we do this survey to try and better understand what's going on with these and why it's happening. And drilling into industrial code, because that is where we are very focused and think is one of the things that could be managed way better. We see 45% of all downtime related to industrial code. And I have a few red highlighted bars here. As you look at the size of organization, whether you agree totally with the breakdown of these numbers, this is one survey of 200 executives. I'm sure we could get a wider survey with some differences, but in general, this tracks with all the conversations that we have. The smaller the organization, the less devices, you're going to have less downtime attributed to industrial code because it's still manageable, at least to a degree. But as you get to be a larger and larger organization with more and more thousands upon thousands of devices, you're going to have a lot more industrial code related downtime. And there could be other things going on as well. Downtime is complex and it's difficult to get at the root of. And there could be a code issue, there could be a machine issue, and there could be human error all happening at once, because that's the tipping point that caused everything to crash and stop working. But thinking about things that we can improve and can improve right now, the way industrial code is managed, I think that's some low-hanging fruit that we can get after. And digging into it more on this next slide, Gavin mentioned earlier hot fixes. And we think about at these hot fixes on the plant floor and how they might impact the organization, how they might drive downtime, and are they contributing to technical debt? We have those big downtime numbers that we looked at, and that causes a lot of pressure on everybody on the plant floor. And they're thinking about it all the time because any minute, any second not producing is money out the door. So we see this really high number of 81% of respondents said that ad hoc fixes, these hot fixes, happen commonly. And what does that lead to? So we also asked the question in follow-up, how often do you permanently fix the problem, do a postmortem, and address that ad hoc fix in a comprehensive way? This one was surprising to me because a majority of respondents said that they follow up. Shawn, with all the people you talk to and all of your experience, does this number seem high to you that 91% would follow up on their hot fixes?
I think that's extremely high. I think the people who are in the stressful position to have to put in a hot fix typically have to run to the next fire. And so the hot fix stays in longer than they wanted to and does usually end up causing, in some cases, issues down the line. And so that, just the people I've talked to, it's like this machine stopped running great on Wednesday. We have no idea why. And they eventually find time to investigate it. And it was a hot fix that caused the issue. So now all of those people in the audience who are really good engineers and troubleshooters, they would definitely follow up. But there are plants where people are short-staffed. They're running from machine to machine to machine. And no, they don't. I think 91% is too high.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's my feeling, and just from conversations, trying to pull all the data and really think about it. It was also looking at the other responses that these same respondents answered with. And I picked out 3 things. One, for downtime incidents, the average recovery time, and that's not just getting up and running, but it's comprehensively addressing the downtime incident all the way to if there's a safety incident, like I mentioned earlier, and getting the inspectors out and getting everything resolved, 28 hours. Another stat, the amount of time spent debugging code each month, 48 hours. And the last one, percent of time spent remediating cybersecurity issues, 69%. These are really high numbers, and they make me think about these ad hoc fixes are happening. You're also spending all this time debugging code, addressing downtime incidents, addressing cybersecurity issues. This is a cascade of things that are going on that people might not be paying attention to. And in going through the raw data, I had Jeff Winter on 2 years in a row to help contextualize the data and kind of stress test it. But we talked through this idea of quick wins add value, but quick fixes add time. Invest in solutions that enhance, not just extend. That's a quote from him, and it just makes me think about when you're going through these quick fixes and everything else that I just talked through, it really is leading to a technical debt buildup. And this next slide, on top of that, thinking about the mass of devices for the last 20 years, every 5 years, devices have doubled in the OT space. That's 4 times over 20 years, devices have doubled. When you think about that expanse, and I know if you are looking at this is quite a slide with a lot of numbers, but just to talk through it, there are so many different devices in the facility. If you make a hot fix to one, you might go and address that, but it also may have cascaded before you can fully address it into something else. And thinking about the complexity of all these devices working together in your space and the amount of different brand devices that are working together. I talk a lot about the PLC brands. You have a mix of Siemens, Rockwell, Schneider, Todesys, Beckhoff, Omron, Mitsubishi, you name it. But you also have that across other devices in the organization that you're trying to get to work together and orchestrate together. The complexity continues to build, and it causes more and more of a problem. And then leading into that, thinking about how do we solve this problem? And AI continues to bubble up as a thing to address. And we showed how we're using AI in Copia, really trying to think about the best use cases, ways that can build trust and ensure data security and privacy. So up right now, I'm showing our responses in the challenges, concerns with AI-powered industrial DevOps. And the top one is that data security and privacy. So we thought deeply as we developed our Copilot, and it is not used with any customer data. It is a closed model. And that's because of that top answer of data security and privacy. And then when you look at the other ones, reliability of AI algorithms, integration with existing systems, high implementation costs, resist to change, lack of skilled personnel, lack of trust in AI models and training, and dependence on cloud services. These are all things that everybody should be thinking about. It's really important to get these things right and to make sure that the way that we're using AI, it's practical and pragmatic approach that the organization can get on board with, and where you're not going to be hit with something that you didn't foresee later down the road.
And I think, if we just take a minute and just think about that, the examples we saw earlier, and I know that's not the extent of all the examples, but the examples we saw earlier, I was looking to see if the AI was trying to interpret things for me, trying to do my job, but was trying to, was it stepping outside of what it knows for sure and trying to add, you know, um, commentary or trying to describe things to me. And it wasn't. What the AI was, what I saw the AI doing was presenting to me some facts that it would have took me a long time to dig up myself, but because I had access to the difference report and what changed and what didn't change. It was able to summarize those changes for me in a way that was extremely useful. And, it didn't try to throw in there, this is going to make the machine run 28% more efficient. It didn't try to draw a conclusion from those changes. It was just trying to get me the details I needed right away to make my decisions. And so I can definitely understand where there's this high level of concern about the reliability of algorithms. And I think that's where all of us with the engineering mind or the programming mind go is like, did it take a leap of faith? Is it trying to, because we have all seen with the commercial AI toys that people can play with online, they will try to do that sometimes and they'll fail miserably. And so I love your approach to this because what your product is doing is it's giving me what I need, abridged and concise, but it's not massaging the data at all. Does that make any sense, Gerry?
100%, Shawn. You captured exactly what I wasn't able to articulate, but it's keeping the human in the loop so that we can build trust as we make sure that these solutions are not just adding value, but adding value in the right ways and evolving together. So thinking more on this AI side of things, we asked another question: which of the following AI-driven features in industrial DevOps would be most valuable to your operations? And the top one there, it's AI-driven version control with change detection and anomaly alerts. So really seeing a need for the things that we're trying to implement and are implementing into the product. And the follow-up top answers there are predictive failure analysis of automation equipment, real-time code analysis for performance bottlenecks, AI-driven optimization of PLC logic. All of these really, really useful things to help speed what we're doing as we tweak and refine our automation to make sure that things are running in a best-in-class way. And all of this, as you may have guessed, is leading to where are we with industrial DevOps adoption today? Thinking about these modern solutions, being able to manage your PLC industrial code in the best possible way, bringing not just these tools, but really the processes, because I always try and keep very grounded and thinking about Dr. Deming and so many great quotes, the founder of SPC and helping to build the TPS, Toyota Production System, and lean manufacturing in Japan. His foundational knowledge really set us up for everything that's come after, from Agile, DevOps, lean manufacturing, and today industrial DevOps, and always talked about automation is not a thing to replace a good process. You have that good process and you can make it better. And when it's better and it's working right, then you can bring in automation. And industrial DevOps, I love because I think it focuses on getting your processes right, bringing in technology on top of that, and optimizing everything you're doing. Anyway, this is to say that I'm not surprised the adoption for industrial DevOps continues to snowball, moving faster and faster. In this year's responses, we see that 92% of the respondents expect to be using industrial DevOps, in some way within the next 11 months. 53% have already adopted or are currently piloting industrial DevOps solutions in their environments. And for good reasons, all reasons that we've already touched on. But I'm going to read them out. Improving PLC management and version control. Yeah, 100%. Integrating AI and automating code generation, things that Copia is bringing to you today. Ensuring reliable backups and the ability to recover from disaster. Yes. Enhance OT security, mitigate your cybersecurity risks. Yes, and yes, 100%. Shawn, are there any I didn't call out that you think are important or something I missed on industrial DevOps?
I definitely agree with the survey that it's going to the implementation. People are going to adopt it at a faster and faster rate. And I was just thinking, like, when did we start using the cameras on our phones to start taking pictures? And it was when it was useful, right? Because some of my old pictures from my phones were like, they look like old bitmaps, but also when we had access to it, right? When we finally had a smartphone, because if you don't have a smartphone, you didn't have a camera. And I think that's where we are now is we have the infrastructure. So if we go back 20 years, 30 years, when I got into this crazy industry, most companies didn't have the infrastructure. Nobody had internet access back in 1990 because, the web browser didn't even exist, right? And, so there was, email was not something I could send to people when I first, I could send it to the vendor and to other members of my company, but not to my customers. But once everybody got email, it was a tool that everybody could use. And I think we have the infrastructure today, right? Most companies do have great networks and backbones, and their OT networks have been, improved and over time. And so people have the infrastructure. Now they have to understand the advantages that you're listing right here, the advantages of actually using DevOps. And I think we're at a time now where people are finally saying, yeah, we need a system that will track the changes. We are losing too much time because people are making ad hoc changes, never going back and investigating that or fixing it. And I'm not saying in every company, but in many companies. And I think now's the time where people are saying, hey, it's the 21st century. It's time to get one of these packages like Copia because we have to have our PLCs backed up. We have to track changes and we have to be able to, quickly revert back to the working code if somebody makes a mistake and doesn't document it. So I think we are at the point that the technology is there. We all get the high resolution camera in our phone now. And so now we can use it, and for all the tasks we use those for. And I think that's where we are with DevOps. Slower than what happened with, software development, because those were driven by big companies with people sitting at desks all day, right? So that was a much easier implementation. But today, everybody has a high-end computer with Windows 10 or 11 likely, and, they're just like, we got to use technology. We have gigabit Ethernet. We have always-on internet. Let's use the technologies we have to solve this big problem that you've highlighted through all these different survey responses. So that's what I'm thinking right now as I'm looking at all these things that people would use DevOps for. Am I offline there? I mean,
I couldn't agree more, Shawn, and I really appreciate that phone analogy. And that, I think, leads nicely to this slide. So when we're thinking about people that haven't, organizations that haven't adopted yet, and people that haven't adopted, because at the end of the day, people driven, our teams working together to make something come into the plant and help improve those processes. So what's stopping that change? So change management resistance. People are blocking it. That's the number one blocker, whether it's being afraid of getting people on board or people actively not on board. Then other things that you hear all the time, competing priorities, lack of budget, lack of need, lack of skills, lack of interest, all these lack ofs that kill momentum. But what I really want to call out on this slide that's highlighted at the bottom is the amount of organizations that said they have no challenges. And they're saying they have no challenges because they've already adopted industrial DevOps at scale because they saw the value in it. Last year, that was 10% of respondents. This year, it's 20% of respondents. So going back to that quick scale of people adopting industrial DevOps at 92% by the end of the next 11 months, within that, 20% of them have this enterprise-wide and are using it actively, have everyone on board, and are gaining advantages of better processes and better technology so that they can worry about other things that are going to add more value to the organization.
Yeah, I just want to talk about this for a second. There are people out there who are struggling with downtime, and yet they say, we don't have a budget. Well, in most cases, this type of package is going to save you money in the course of a 12-month period because it's going to eliminate a lot of the reasons you have downtime. But the one thing that you don't see on here is you haven't asked people how many of your PLCs and other devices have been backed up recently, because until that unit fails, and I get messages all the time, people have HMIs that fail and they're like, how do I get the code out of it? We never backed it up. It's like, until that happens to you, maybe one of these packages look expensive in a maintenance budget, but if you look at your emergency budget and when the money you're spending on all these major issues, it's really a lot less. It's a money saver, in my opinion. But let me turn it back to you, Gerry.
I couldn't agree more in the cost savings. Your points also made me think back to when we were talking about downtime and that discrepancy between manager to C-suite. It's huge. And what's going to really bring value and what's going to save you money, it can make all the difference in the world if you're able to prioritize right on the things that are going to limit downtime, especially when you think about respondents saying 45% of all downtime is either directly or indirectly related to industrial code. If you can manage that code better and reduce your downtime by a percent, that percent can have a huge impact and pay for everything.
Absolutely.
I think I'm getting near the end of my slides, but one more thing. I'm always thinking about the people involved in the process. And it's so important because no technology will ever get used if it's not intuitive enough for your teams, if it's not really going to help them. And industrial DevOps, industrial code lifecycle management takes you from firefighting to future building. And this is a large chart showing how people responded about where industrial DevOps teams spend their time. And I want to call attention to the far right side. And it shows where people responded often or always. So the top answer, learning and adopting new technologies, they are spending 81% of their time doing this, often or always. And then the bottom of this chart, unplanned work and or rework, only 59% of the time. It's the lowest answer in here. And just taking that out and thinking about how are your teams going to feel when they are able to learn and adopt new technologies versus doing unplanned work and rework? What type of culture is going to be driven there in terms of driving productivity, collaboration, improvement, and ability to question processes to make them better? So many cascading effects happen when you can empower your teams with the right tools in the right place. And think about that removal of stress when you can take them from firefighting to future building. I mean, Shawn, what do you think there?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That definitely makes a point there of what they're doing and what they're not doing.
100%. And I always like to end on people and the importance of people. Brings us to the end of the presentation that I have today. If you are watching, I have a QR code up here. You can download the second annual State of Industrial DevOps report by scanning it. And I really appreciate the time. Shawn, it's always a pleasure. I always appreciate the context that you bring to everything that we talk about here. And I just want to say thank you again. And then last slide, if anybody wants to talk about the things I presented here, you can scan this QR code and sign up for a time. We can talk about this data, we can show you the product, and answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, Gerry, and I want to thank you and Gavin and Kaitlin for coming on. I really loved going through the product, seeing the demo, and taking a look at the new way you're implementing AI in your product. And just so much. I could talk for hours about this, but I know we're at the end of our time. And again, thank you for coming back on. We always appreciate you guys. Everybody who's listening, you should find all the links also in the description. So if you're driving, could you just shout out your website for those who are driving?
Yes, Copia, COPIA.io.
Okay, so hopefully you guys remember that, and we'll have all the links in the description. And again, Gerry, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed our conversation.
You're welcome, and thank you, Shawn. Always a pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. And I want to thank Gerry, Gavin, and Kaitlin all for coming on the show and not only bringing us up to speed on DeviceLink and the new AI features, those look really cool, but also giving us a summary of their latest DevOps report. I thought that was so interesting, seeing where people are having downtime and what the causes are and so on. So in any case, I want to also thank you for tuning in this week. And I want to thank Copia for sponsoring this episode so we could release it to you completely ad-free. And with that said, I just want to wish you all good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace.